Observation 1 is the resolution analysis. Based upon the top of the United States should significantly increase military aid for Ukraine. The based upon the framework, one fiat is an act of imagination necessary to allow both teams access to debate. Any of the framework denies reciprocity should be rejected. 2. The affirmative team has the right to find the resolution reasonably through the use of parametrics with the burden of proving the resolution true. 3. Policy net benefit is the best criterion for the debate. This allows both teams access to predictable burdens and methods of refutation. 4. Discursive implications can be evaluated through the framework of the affirmative. If the methodology of the plan is flawed, the implication of the criticism must be a direct effect of plan's passage. 5. Due to the fact that our votes have a multiplicity of meaning unless the affirmative interpretation is shown to exclude the negative, it ought to be accepted in order to avoid silencing the PMC. 6. Of the PMC silence through meaning interpretations or framework shifts to discursive implications or more media must be paramount over the PMC discursive errors. Observation 2 is the background. The first argument is that in 2012, 22 people died as a result of landmines in Ukraine. Thus the plan text. The United States will, through an act of Congress signed by the President, implement a mine removal program in Ukraine. The United States will, through an act of Congress signed by the President, implement a mine removal program in Ukraine. Observation 3 is the solvency. The first argument is that the United States is going to use its mine-sniffing rats that we have. The little A is that the organization of POPO trains Gambian rats to be able to sniff out explosives. They, at the end of their training, have to pass a test where they're able to correctly identify 300 mines with a 99.6% accuracy, meaning they're only allowed to miss 1 out of every 300. The little B is that this has worked to clear over 96 million square meters of land to date. The little C is that 18.2 thousand pieces of ordnance have been collected using this technology. The second argument is that rats are uniquely able to solve. The little A is that they are too light to trigger landmines, where dogs frequently step on landmines and accidentally blow themselves up. Like rats only weigh about 1 kilogram and it takes 15 kilograms to trigger it, so they're safe. And the little B is that they're able to detect based on the smell of the explosives, means they can find plastic mines too that a metal detector would normally fail to identify. You got a question?
You answered.
Okay, cool. Advantage 1 is landmines. Based upon his uniqueness, the first argument is that landmine deaths in 2012 were 22,000, and the second argument is that 1,987 deaths total have been recorded as a result of landmines in Ukraine to 2012, which is the most recent year for which information is available. The third argument is that, according to the Landmine and Cluster Munition Monitor, there are still 5 million landmines in Ukraine that need to be removed. The fourth argument is that the only treatment center for individuals who step on a landmine but don't die exists in Kiev, so we're not even entirely sure. It hasn't been blown up by the rioting yet, but moreover, it is difficult for these individuals to get there because it's hard to transport yourself when you're missing limbs from stepping on a landmine. The little A is that all of the programs in Ukraine for individuals who are disabled as a result of landmines or disabled in general are essentially discount programs. They don't help these individuals find work or find any kind of support. They just give them discounts on goods that they need to buy. So if these individuals can't get a job, they get trapped in their socioeconomic position. The visa point is the link. The first argument is that we remove these landmines using this technology. The rats are really quick and they're able to pull them out fast. The second argument is that people can't die from stepping on landmines or be maimed from stepping on landmines when the landmines are out of the country. Thus, the CISO point are the impacts. The first argument is that we reduce the number of deaths that happen in Ukraine as a result. The people who most frequently die from landmines are children who don't know any better than to go walking in the minefields, mean that the individuals who are being most targeted by this right now are the youngest and most vulnerable. The second argument is that of cyclical poverty. Individuals who step on landmines have a tendency to have a very high difficulty finding work afterwards because they find themselves with considerable physical impairments that they didn't originally have and aren't given the skills to cope with. You can see this as through the fact that services reach only 5% of disabled individuals in Ukraine at present, means that these individuals are necessarily kept from being able to get access to jobs. These people, as a result, are trapped in a situation where they have to question whether or not they're going to be able to pay for their next meal and oftentimes need to turn to just begging on the street because there is literally no other economic opportunity for these individuals. And the third impact is that this is a form of structural violence, that when these individuals are treated as a disposable population as a result of their physical impairments, that these individuals are necessarily oppressed by the systems that be in Ukraine right now. And the only way that we can stop this from spreading is by stopping the number of people that fall into this structure. You good? Yep. Advantage 2 is refugees. Advantage 2 is refugees. The ace of one is the uniqueness. The first argument is that there are an estimated 675,000 people that are going to try to leave Crimea into Ukraine at present. The second argument is that landmines are preventing this because they have been planted along the Ukrainian-Crimean border. So individuals who wish to cross from Crimea into the Ukraine have to worry pretty considerably about passing through minefields. The third argument is that people fear crossing minefields as a result of their fear of stepping on a landmine. Like, this is pretty straightforward. The piece of point is the link. The first argument is that we remove the landmines along the Ukrainian-Crimean border because they are located on the side of the Ukraine right now. The second argument is that this allows people to freely cross because when they no longer need to worry about whether or not they're going to step on a landmine, then they're going to be able to find alternative routes through across the border and be able to get into the Ukraine. The C support of the impacts. The first argument here is that this is going to allow these individuals to escape the violence that exists in Crimea right now. Because these individuals are going to be able to get away from the Russian government that has recently annexed Crimea. The second argument is that Russia is horrible on human rights, and we need to be able to get individuals out of this region in order to get them to a safe location. The little a under this is that you can look to the Russian treatment of homosexual individuals and of activists, that any political activist is necessarily targeted by the Russian government as a means of oppressing them and suppressing their movement is a reason why these individuals need to be able to get out of these regions to be able to spread their movement. Only by getting out of Russia are you ever going to be able to enact social change within Russia, because Russia is able to very effectively suppress any social change right now. An outside rallying point such as the Ukraine is going to allow these individuals to coalition build in a safe space where they can't be co-opted by the Russian government, and allow them to build the drive for social reform that is necessary by allowing them to freely cross across these borders as a result of their lack of fear of detonation upon crossing. This is the only way that we're going to be able to resolve the human rights violations that will appear in Crimea in the future.
The case.
Alright. Sorry about that. Alright. Actually, just read off. That's a terrible episode for it.
Read the case.
Yeah. Are we starting on solvency?
Yes. Yeah. Are you starting on solvency?
I will start on solvency in case we're going to agree on this. Cool. Alright. Here we go. One totality, interpretation, increase needs to take from existing and make it larger. Means you're going to take something that already exists, make it more and more powerful, increase the funding to whatever. B violation, you can't increase from 0 right now because you're not saying something that is existent. The violation means that they are making a new program entirely. They're not just taking something and increasing it. C here is standards. One, bright line. We're providing a very clear definition of what is and is not topical, showing that as long as you are increasing an existing program, you are topical, and because they are not on the right side of bright line, they are on topical as well. Go.
What military aid does the United States send to Ukraine right now?
We send a lot of we send a lot of
I haven't been that long, so a lot is out in Sasko. So we don't send a lot of stuff.
We send them various like
Military equipment like that.
2 here is education. We're running more education now because looking at what we already provide, that you're looking at more and more what already exists, not just making something and making something new. 3 years around because we can predict coming into this round and hitting something that's this is not existent right now. It's nothing we can predict happening because they're not going from something that already exists. D here is voters. 1A priority. This is the first priority issue. You have to look at why this is the front. You can't decide the rules. We can decide to win. They have broken the rules. They cannot win. The 2 here is fairness. It's not because of the fact that we could put this coming in. We did not know this. Like this is the kind of thing you'd be looking for coming in. It's unfair. 3 years education because of the fact that they are not looking at what is currently going on. Education is locus debate, and therefore you're looking at the education this round. On it. 2. Totality part 2. A, interpretation. Military aid equals 3 times the variety to provide U.S. defensive equipment, services, and training. The violation here is that they are just providing like this, they're just providing this sort of equipment, in this case rats production equipment, animals at 7 point. They're not providing services and training. So CE standards, one bright line, we need a very clear definition of what is top and what is not. There obviously works on that. 2 years predictability, like we cannot predict coming this round of land mice and rats are going to be sent out into Ukraine to solve these problems. And 3 years education, going to debate their harming education by looking at this new program and not looking at what already exists. D, voters, a priority 1, set of rules for that. Wins 2 years education. Because we're in education around fairness, they're looking at the fact that this is unfair, so you need negative. Alright, disadvantage. Gas problem, winter is coming. You need this one, gas shutoffs have happened before. This happened 3 times in the past 10 years, and everything's a little bit unstable in the region. Russia decides that they want to go ahead and drop the gas. The here's that Moscow wants this giant Euro trading bloc. They want to be able to have this kind of like Eastern European trading bloc that rivals the EU. They want this super good trade power. Therefore, they're really like weary of the West influence in the region. They're really worried of things that West involvement there. The 3 here's that most of European countries actually get gas from Russia. Most every Eastern European country gets 95% of its gas from Russia. In addition, the EU as a whole, besides Spain and Portugal, get 25% of their gas on average from Russia. The 2 year situation is currently unstable. Here's that Putin has already threatened to shut off gas, but he hasn't yet because there's not any serious retaliation in the U.S. or the EU. We've done like certain like individual sanctions, but they've just done the same thing back, and we've not done anything serious to warrant the retaliation. But if we're doing anything like this, it'll obviously be more and more West influence in the region, more and more military, more present, which would increase instability in the region. Link. Plan causes a gas problem shut off. One, it's still in the region, it gets increased because of the fact that having more and more military development in the region, maybe it's just looking at anti-mine things, just like that. If we have people on the ground to do that, we have more and more military presence in the Ukraine, which increases instability because of the fact that they're throwing more and more arms in the region. The 2 years that Russia feels getting up on because of the fact that they feel that everyone wants to help the Ukraine, everyone's just throwing them to the side, so they feel like the West, the entire world is siding with the Ukraine, and they're just against Russia, they want to retaliate here. On the internal links. Short-term shutoffs have been consequential in the past. The A of this is that problems arise very quickly when Russia shuts off gas. For example, last time they did this, several years ago, a lot of schools had to close in the region. Schools didn't have energy or heat because there was no gas in the country, so that the kids had to stay home because schools couldn't open. In addition, hospitals struggled to stay open and provide care to people still because of the fact that there was no power. Also, when this happened, the UK had to dip into its gas reserves, and gas prices rose exponentially across the continent. B years that Russia does this in cold months, especially January through March, when it is some of the heavier months in the Eastern European winter. So we have much more of so they can maximize the effect this will have of shutting off the pipeline. Impacts here is long-term gas problem shut off. The A here is that this prolonged instability in the region because you're doing this long-term kind of operation. So you're going to have more and more. You're going to have forces that are longer, which means you're going to have more and more stability in the region for an incredibly long time. Which leads to a shut off of the gas pipeline. The B here is that people freeze to death at home because of the fact that there's no heat in the country anymore, because most of their heating comes from this oil that they're getting from the gas pipeline. They can't afford to heat their homes anymore. They have no way of doing so. They freeze to death in their own homes. There's also a strong lack of emergency services right now because a lot of places don't have a way to keep their buildings running. So it's really hard for things like 911 type services to keep running because of the fact that there's no power in the country because there's no gas. So this happens because lack of emergency services, people freeze in their homes. C is dehumanization. People are dehumanized as they die slowly because they can't leave their homes, they can't do anything. They're just stuck in their house to freeze to death because they have no heat. This happens. Dehumanization is worse than death because of the fact that you are a human while you're still alive, and so you are in essence reduced to less than while still living. Anything else on the right? Good. All right, on to case. Yeah.
So Russia does this stuff in January and March.
January, like through March.
January through March.
Late winter. All right, on to case. Oh, yeah, this one's right. Cool. No, that is not. All right, cool. I guess advantage one then. I don't know what's that sounds right now. All right, so.
Sorry, where are we?
Advantage. Yeah, sorry about that. Right. You like what solves this doesn't actually solve. This doesn't solve for the conflict in the region because of the fact that while you're moving around, it still means that there's a strong tension between Ukraine and Russia. So, well, there's a solved issue there. Looking at the actual damage. Cool. Second advantage. That's good. All right. So the biggest calculus, the biggest story here is on the impacts. We're talking about that people are going to go into fleeing Russia and things like that. Alright, so for starters, the issue given the agreements that Russia's horrible human rights and that it's much better just to escape to Ukraine. What they're ignoring is the fact that right now, most of the majority that ousted the previously existent Ukraine administration is actually incredibly pro-fascist and anti-Semite. So right now, that is the kind of party that is taking over in the Ukraine. So that happens, you're not going to be able to guarantee there's going to be massive human rights moves in the Ukraine because that's the kind of party that's taking over. Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So their whole argument is this allows people to get into Ukraine easier and allows more refugees. But the turn on this is that actually refugee camps or displaced person camps are incredibly terrible because of the fact that they have all kinds of diseases associated with them. They often have a really hard time providing potable water or safe water or good sanitation in the area. So you have more people dying of like waterborne diseases, for example. In addition, rape occurs at an exponentially higher rate. There we go. Because of the fact that there's a lot less law enforcement in these areas, a lot more anarchistic. That's the word now. And so there's a higher percentage of things like rape and violent crimes to occur, which means you have more dehumanization. In addition, they are inherently dehumanizing because of the fact that these people are set aside from society. They're not part of society with their own little refugee camp. They're in their own little area, which means that they're seen as less and they're seen as otherwise society. They're just dehumanized by being there. So all they're doing is perpetuating the fact that there are going to be more people being able to come over and form these refugee camps. Yeah, that's time.
The order is going to be top tally increase, top tally military aid, case, advantage, which is going to have advantage 1, advantage 2, this.
Sorry, you said one more time, please.
Sure. So it's going to be top tally increase, top tally military aid, advantage 1, advantage 2, the Sure, I'm going to start the timer. We're going to talk for a second, and then I'm going to start. First argument, as the overview of the top tally shows, is that these two definitions are contradictory. Our argument here is that they say that we have to increase the existing military aid, but then they tell us that the military aid is only equipment. Our argument here is that we cannot meet both of these interpretations because we've already said that the equipment means that there's no way we can meet your interpretation. The second argument is going to be that this is on specific to the increased top tally, is that this is a bad interpretation because the fact that it's incredibly over-limiting. You make it that we have to send outdated equipment. The entire argument here is that equipment is only outdated. It means that that you limit us to the top out that we would never be able to get advantage ground. This is an over-limiting interpretation. The third argument here is that we mean that we are sending military aid. Our argument here is that we are sending this military aid is an increase in the overall amount of aid by providing this is aid both to the military and to the individual who needs in this aid form, means that we mean your interpretation. The fourth argument here is the counter interpretation that increase means to make greater or larger in size or amount. To make greater or larger in size or amount. Five is that we meet this counter interpretation because we are increasing the amount of military aid overall. This is a better interpretation. The counter standards first predictability that this is a very predictable interpretation that we would be able to send this aid to the country. This means this is a predictable interpretation. The second argument is a debatable interpretation that you have access to any of your arguments about why the setting the aid is bad. This means that both provides you ground and that allows us to have a debatable discussion on the topic. Third is the affirmative has the right to define the topic reasonably as long as both debatable and grammatical. Means this is key to being able to prevent the negative just right top tally shows that we would never be able to meet. Means that this is key to affirmative access. They say that their interpretation is good because right line. The first point here is that they don't say why right line is good. They just say that they just assert that it divides what is topical and not. They say that they don't provide a reason why should we prefer the right line. They say predictability. We say this is a very topical. This is a very predictable interpretation that since Russia's been planting the landmines now, this is probably a very predictable affirmative. The next argument they make here is ground. They don't isolate any problem they have lost in this debate. They still get all of their access to Russian backlash arguments. Means they don't lose anything as a result of this. And I want you to cross the line from our topic case where we tell you that all words have a multiplicity of meanings, which means as long as we show that they have not been excluded as a result of this debate, that there's no reasons why you should be rejecting this. And we won't say that there's no risk of abuse. They don't isolate reasons why you want to prefer this. Additionally, say that you won't quote on potential abuse, and if you do, that means that potential and advanced theory probably solves the dissent. Go to top tally on military aid. First argument here is that this is a bad interpretation. You tell us in the point of information that the only military equipment that we send is very outdated. It means that this is probably a bad interpretation, doesn't give us any advantage ground. The second interpretation, the second argument here is though is that we mean that we are sending equipment, that we are sending both the troops and the Canadian Reds and all of this equipment that they have. This means that we need more interpretation. Additionally, third mistake, counter interpretation that military aid as a result defined by the Congressional Research Service is divided into 5 categories: bilateral development aid, economic assistance, humanitarian aid, multilateral economic contribution, and military aid. We say this means that it's a term of military aid is a term of art that is defined as training equipment and troops. We are sending all of these things necessarily means that we are meeting your interpretation. In addition, we say the counter is first that this is the best interpretation because it's in the literature. We are telling you this is within that this is like grounded in the literature. The Congressional Research Service is saying that this is the interpretation for military aid. She's not going to say debatably that this is a very top and very debatable interpretation. You still get access to all of the arguments that you wanted in this debate means that you do not lose any access to. Third, we want you to cross-apply the affirmative as the right to define the resolution reasonably as means that there's probably a better interpretation and prevents access. Additionally, once they make arguments somewhere. Oh, a bright line, cross-apply data provide reasons why you should be preferring bright line means that you're going to be rejecting this totality. Additionally, they say predictability once cross-apply this data or predictable affirmative means that there's no reasons why you're going to prefer this. They say education, you say they don't provide reasons why you're decreasing education. You say probably reading something a little further, you probably increasing your education more, you probably know about giving rights while community surroundings, they probably going to be preferring the affirmative on this question, and they don't provide any reasons why you're going to be rejecting students results as cross-apply. There's no reason potential use. Advantage 1. They say that we don't solve for the overall conflict and that tensions are still going to exist. We are not claiming to solve for the overall conflict. Our argument here is that we need to solve for the systemic harm to individuals as a result, are dying as a result of landmines. Jacob tells you in the 80s that 22,000 people have died as a result of landmines in Ukraine since they've been placed. Necessarily means this is a systemic that you should be evaluating. First, you should say that you should probably evaluate probability before these large magnitude scenarios. Our argument here is that the systemic impacts are probably more likely to occur. Additionally, we say that probably that focus on a high magnitude flash point impacts prevents any kind of action necessary means we'll never be able to act means that you should be rejecting the disadvantage on that question means that you should be in the extent Jacob's impact hit the systemic death of individuals as a result of landmines. The reasons why you're going to be rejecting this. Okay. Yep. Advantage 2 on refugees. They try to go for the impact takeout on human rights, that the Ukrainian government is back for human rights. First, we said that we are able to check this back. Our argument here is that the Ukrainian government doesn't have the same ability of Russia to be able to depress these kinds of movements. Our argument here is that the Ukrainian government is probably weak overall, and that only by allowing for these human rights movements to function within Ukraine or be able to create a rallying point that is able to solve back war all of the harm that you talk about. You argue that refugee camps are bad. First, we said that the United States and the EU probably check back. All of our arguments are more specific to Africa, where these individuals are, where there are no resources. Now, our argument here is that the European Union and the United States probably check back against the arms of refugee camps. She said, no, like our argument here is that the country as a whole was like sound until like a month ago. Our argument here is that individuals that are crossing from Crimea into Ukraine are going to join things like family members and are not going to these refugee camps that you talk about means that you don't get a link to this. Additionally, you do not impact this scenario. Our argument here is that the individual repression of refugee camps, refugees within the country itself is worse than saying you do not get a reason, you don't get a terminal impact to or turn and to the impact, the overall terminal impact of human rights abuses throughout the entire country. Necessarily means we're going to outweigh the risk of this turn on magnitude. No, sir. First argument here is that they're probably going to shut down the gas now. Our argument here is that I mean, this should have already happened. Russia, the United States and the European Union have already placed sanctions on Russia. Necessarily means they probably either are going to or already will shut down the gas pipelines now. Means there's no way that this current scenario is not unique. Second, say there's no link to the scenario. Our argument here is that Russians are not going to receive the same are not going to be received as a reason for the shutting down of gas. Our argument here is that the removal of landmines is probably a reason why there's no reason for Russian backlash. Additionally, third, say no link that Russia signed the Ottawa Treaty that eliminates landmines said that they can't plant landmines anymore. This probably is the reason why they can't publicly backlash against the removal of landmines in Ukraine, because there's no reason why this is going to happen. Additionally, fourth argument here is the terms we actually are able to check back against Russia removing the pipeline. Our argument here is that the United States within the region are able to check back against Russia and be able to stop them from just exerting hegemony over the region. Our argument here is that if Russia goes unchecked, they'll just be able to expand out further. And shutting down the pipeline is probably the reasons why they would go over the anyway. Means the only United States president going to be able to check the sixth argument is the no internal link that the United States would just increase production. Our argument here is that with new fracking technology, the United States would become new Saudi Arabia of natural gas. Means that we'd just be able to increase production, be able to trade off with any decrease by Russia. Additionally, the next argument here is there's no time frame to this scenario. The argument here is that Russia shuts this down in January to March. Means that winter is over, bro. Means that there's no reason to remain first. Either this is not going to happen because Russia's not going to perceive this the same. But either second means there's no time frame to or analysis means it's going to happen. It's going to happen. Additionally, the some argument here is that there's no link to this scenario because we're going to be out quick enough. You can look to our solvency analysis that says that we're able to include landmines fast enough. Means that within the 9 months between the transfer of shutting off the pipeline means that we would be out of the country and Russia's not going to shut down the pipeline. Means we probably check back this entire scenario.
military aid, DA, and then case and order. Well, the two advantages. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Are we all set?
Yeah.
Okay, on to topicality increase. Except A, we meet, and then on to the counter standards. Predictability, first of all, this would be a predictable definition, even though we're not going for it. 2, yeah, it's debatable, obviously. And I think 3, Aff has rights to define, but we don't concede this because this could be extremely abusive. If the affirmative has rights to define, this could lead to extreme abuse in the round. They don't provide any reverse voters, and they don't address our voters. So moving on to topicality, military aid. Again, extend the we meet. They don't have any offensive message. Okay, moving on to the Spanish. They say that this shutdown is happening now. It's not new. But look to Matt's analysis coming out of his speech. Right now, Putin was on the break. He said that he issued a statement that he's considering shutting off the gas pipeline, but he hasn't actually issued a statement that he's actually going to do it. He said that it's an option for him. He said that Putin said there's nothing that warrants it yet. So we're on the brink right now. Extending across the fact that most of Europe gets at least 50% of its gas from Russia, and the fact that Eastern European countries, 95% of their gas comes from Russia. Moving on to link levels, say that there's no link because rats are not perceived as a threat. Look at their definition of military aid. This is perceived as military aid, and it's this perception that is key. It is seen as the U.S. providing military aid to Ukraine. So this apparently includes equipment, services, and trade. So this is going to be seen as definite military aid to Ukraine, which is going to link. It's really a perception link. Russia's on the brink right now. It's just this military aid, what we're calling military aid, is being pushed us over the edge. They say that landmines, this gives Russia no reason. But Russia is going to see this as a first step. Any increased military aid is going to piss Russia off and trigger this break. And they say that Russia signed the Ottawa Treaty. Well, a lot of countries sign a lot of treaties that they never implement. Russia also signed the Universal Declaration of Women's Rights, and they're horribly abusive to women. Russia, just because Russia signed the treaty doesn't mean it actually acts in accordance with the treaty. That's completely bogus. Even the United States doesn't act according to the treaties we signed. Okay, moving on to link, we'll see that extend across the link that Russia's gonna feel like the world is siding with Ukraine. This is going to be this military aid is really the break. And once the U.S. does military aid, it's going to trigger the EU to do military aid, because the EU and the U.S. are acting really closely with Ukraine, with the Ukraine-Russian situation right now. When the EU implemented sanctions, the U.S. implemented sanctions. So this is also going to lead to EU military action, which is just going to further piss off Russia, leading to the shutdown. We're going to internally, but globally, so that we can check back these U.S. It's the Saudi Arabia of natural gas. First of all, consumption of natural gas is skyrocketing. It's whenever when Russia refuses to trade, we're never going to be able to account for all of that demand in natural gas. And furthermore, we don't have the infrastructure to ship that natural gas at present. And since their plan doesn't include for any infrastructure in natural gas, we can never solve. And look to the uniqueness where 95% of gas in Eastern Europe comes from Russia. We'll never be able to check back for that amount of natural gas when there's such a high demand in the U.S. and Canada, where a lot of it goes. And then the internal links that this happens instantaneously. The gas problem can shut off instantaneously, and this leads to school closures. Hospitals are not able to stay open, and the price of gas increases. And say that we have to make time frame, and winter's over. But first of all, this is gonna happen immediately, right when we pass plan. Russia's going to shut off the gas pipeline. And second of all, they say that winter's over, but I don't know if you've ever been to Eastern Europe, but it's freaking cold all year round, especially at night. So even if it's spring, summer, the nights are still cold. If you've ever been to the Czech Republic, you're freezing your ass off if you don't have heat at night, which is extremely bad, which leads to pneumonia and a ton of other things. So even when winter's over, not having heat is extremely problematic, and it's problematic for other reasons. like gas is not only used for heat, but for a lot of other things, like emergency services. Okay, moving on to the impact level, just like set-across like impacts, like this is going to cause instability, people are going to freeze to death. Extended cross impact, that we're going to have a lack of emergency services, and extended cross impact, this is extremely dehumanizing. And you're always going to prefer this impact of dehumanization to the point where dehumanization trumps all other impacts, because dehumanization is worse than death. Because you're alive, yet you do not feel as if you have dehumanity.
So why would a decrease in natural gas availability mean that we lose emergency services?
Like natural gas is used for like power, so if like an emergency facility, like a 911, their equivalent, like operating setting physically can't stay open because they don't have like power or heat, then that's going to delay emergency services. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Okay. Okay, moving on to advantage. So okay. They don't claim to solve the overall conflict, and they don't say it's systematic is more likely, but like if we're going to implement a plan, and like even Rez did that, like we should actually try to help the conflict, which we don't, which is okay, whatever the point. Okay, advantage to refugees. We have to impact level. You see that Ukraine checks because they don't have the same ability to be government. But to the point where the plan would actually increase the legitimacy and the resources of the Ukraine government. So like the point to what not only that we are supporting this government, which in turn has anti-Semitic fascist anti-Semitic leaders, which they can see. Like to the point where the U.S. supports it, they're going to gain more power and be able to actually suppress these individuals, especially when we're giving them military aid. And so like Ukraine will never, like just because Ukraine is weak, it's like gaining legitimacy, and it definitely has a propensity to the exact same thing as Russia, especially when you consider that Ukraine is and Russia are neighbors. Like they're going to be like Ukraine is influenced by Russian policy. Okay, and so like onto like the refugee camp turn. You see like the U.S. and the EU will check back and like all the bad things with refugee camps, especially in Africa. This simply like is not true. Like refugee camps like everywhere are like horrible conditions. Even like just like it's even look to like the camps, like internment camps and like Hoovervilles, like in the U.S. Even though it was in a developed country, they were still really awful. And it's just like intuitive, like in any region, when you have a high amount of people all gathered together, and you don't have infrastructure, you don't have permanent buildings, you have like tents, you're not gonna have actual plumbing, which means you're not gonna have safe water. So you're gonna have diseases spread because you don't have sanitation, you don't have safe drinking water, which is going to create disease, and you're gonna see a lot of rape. Even like when you have highly concentrated people and like not a lot of enforcement, because no matter where you are, you have a lot of people with no enforcement, you're gonna see increased rape and more dehumanization.
So the order will be overview on top, followed by DISAD, and then impact out the bottom. Alright, everybody ready? Alright, cool. We're going to go to Neg Montana DP in the term first because the impact cap will show you that our DISAD will outweigh all the impacts proposed by the affirmative. But in addition, because of the fact that we will win the turn on refugee camps, and that's going to be one of the bigger impacts around. So looking at the winner is coming DISAD. That's what it's called. So we're showing you the fact that right now there's a lot of instability in the region of value improvement, so that we have done nothing too serious because they've been able to do everything that we've done back. So for example, when we did all these, I'm showing you that out of the, or I'm showing you the LLC that, for example, we've done all our sanctions we've done have just been like on individual people in Russia, and they've done the same thing. Like we haven't done anything that they think is warrant of any serious retaliation. When it was something value improvement said this morning, he said that, oh, I think we're done for now. There's nothing else that I have to retaliate to unless there's something, that's what he's saying right now. That is what's coming out of Russia. So we're showing you that. One, we're still unique, and two, like this is still fine. But in addition, you're going to have a link level, and we're showing you that is the perception argument here. It doesn't matter if we're actually sending them, what we're actually doing. The fact that we're sending a bunch of people with, in this case, rats, but we could do whatever to this region, and it is going to increase in, it's going to more militarized reason because of the fact that more people there. So you're looking at this level, you're going to have the fact that we're going to have this increase of instability in the region, this increase in tension military presence on the ground. That's what we're arguing here. You know, they said that Russia signed the Ottawa Treaty, and Ryan was like, that's super big. They also signed the Women's Rights Treaty. They don't really acknowledge that so much. Just because of the fact that they signed something doesn't mean that's really acknowledged. And initially, you're going with the fact that this will upset Russia because of the fact that this is the first step. The biggest link here, which they don't answer after the last speech, is the perception argument that we make. This is when Russia will feel like they're getting dumped on because everyone is supporting the Ukraine. We have this kind of argument when we're showing you that when we're supporting the Ukraine, other people are trying to support the Ukraine. They're getting dumped on. They're going to do some kind of backlash on it because they feel like they're in a corner. That's what we're showing you on the LLC. So because of that, we still link in our impacts. So continuing on, they bring the U.S. Saudi Arabia of natural gas refineries to the point like, look, we don't have the infrastructure for this now. That's the key thing here is we can have all the natural gas we want, but if we have no way to get it to Russia or Eastern Europe, like it doesn't really matter. What? Yeah, it's just like have the supply in order to supply all of the U.S. and our growing interests, and that that just isn't possible. Their argument is there's no time frame. We're showing you this will happen instantaneously. We obviously show you there is a timeline. That timeline is now. More importantly, the fact that Eastern Europe is still cold. Their overnight lows are still below freezing. That is still going to be a factor in this. It is still cold there. So, yeah, that's happening. We're just going to see, and I'll give this on the impact calculator, but all of Eastern Europe being without power is kind of a big deal. Cool. Looking at the advantage, looking at the refugee advantage. We're showing you that right now their whole goal is to allow more and more refugees to enter Ukraine, and we're showing you it's actually an incredibly bad idea because of the fact that you're going to have more people living in those refugee camps where there's a lot of lawlessness. You have more rape and dehumanization, things like that occurring. But in addition, you also have people starving or dying of diseases because these running around because there's a lot of strong sanitation in the area. So this whole advantage is causes it to happen as you have that happening more and more. So they cause these human rights violations. All being impacts calc. We're showing you with the DISAD that right now, if you pass the pen, there's an immediate gas pump shut-off, which shows that you have Eastern Europe without power, without heat, things like that, because of no natural gas. In addition, when 25% of EU's gas comes from that, they're going to have huge gas price increases. They're going to dip into their reserves, and then which is bad for the consumer there, which is bad for the economy. We're showing you that's happening. So if you're affecting the entire continent, that is a widespread magnitude. This is really definite probability, the definite time frame, and the largest magnitude you're going to come out of this round. This DISAD right here. This is why you're going to be voting for this right here. But also on the other impact calc, we're returning the second advantage and showing you that you're going to have this happen as well in this large region. That you're also going to have this kind of issue. And considering dehumanization on both is the largest impact you can have because you are a human, but you're not living as a human, you are seen as less than. Then that is the biggest impact in the round. So because of the fact that they don't have anything that comes, they're on the impact how they can't come close to us in magnitude or time frame, this is why you're going to vote for Montana DP in this round. Thank you.
I would like advantage 1, the disadvantage, advantage 2. Actually, I'll go advantage 1, advantage 2. There'll be no review of those options.
It's going to be an easy battle for Nevada today. One of my opponents are conceding too much link defense, and a link turn against the disadvantage means that we are always going to be able to weigh the advantages against the DISAD, and Nevada is going to come out ahead of that analysis. The first argument that I want you to look to is on advantage 1. They don't do any new refutation of any of Corey's argumentation, means we get full access to those impacts. This sure might be a small scenario, but it is a 100% probability scenario. There is absolutely no questioning of this at the point at which there is no link defense standing in the round today. This impacts out to cyclical poverty and structural violence, which is a systemic impact that needs to be evaluated first, because the invisibility of this violence is what makes it easier to ignore as a result of high magnitude, ultra low probability impacts like what is coming out of my opponent's case. This is the kind of impact that needs to be evaluated first because it is systematically ignored in current policy conversations and can only be resolved by given unique spotlighting as a result of its high probability. Right. Moreover, they concede Corey's impact analysis that you need to evaluate probability first because flashpoint impact analysis just allows, sorry, what was that last part you said?
Prevents action.
Prevents any action. There's a reason why we need to be able to, we need to respond in face of flashpoint impacts because otherwise we're never going to be able to do anything and we're never going to resolve anything out of fear. On to advantage 2. they make a couple of responses. The first is that they say that we're going to increase the legitimacy of this government because we're providing them with military aid. However, we're not actually changing their military capacities. We're just removing landmines, and which probably just allows individuals more mobility, so this is probably still allowing us full access to solvency for our impacts for these refugees while not actually changing the situation with the legitimacy of the Ukrainian government, because we're not actually increasing their military capabilities or increasing the amount of hedge that they have through hard power. It means that there's probably no link snare that can actually come out of this argumentation. But the next argument that they go for is that all refugee camps have horrible conditions, and they're warned for this as the internment camps, which my first response is that these aren't refugee camps, and my second response was that this was used in a time of war as an attack against a specific group of people. The third response that I want to make, though, is that you can extend Corey's argumentation that these people are probably just going back to their family that are in other parts of the Ukraine and not actually going into refugee camps as a reason why we at least mitigate most of this argument. And this is at best a parallel turn, not a straight turn, because these they concede the argument that these individuals face the worst kind of oppression in Crimea right now as a result of the political situation that's happening there. Means that we probably need to allow these individuals the ability to escape. But moreover, the PMC rhetoric is that these individuals are going to have freedom of movement regardless of which side of the border they're on. So even if all of their argumentation is true, that is probably just allowing them more ability to be able to mobilize away from any kind of violence that they find on any side of the border. Onto the gas set. There are four key arguments that I want to be going for on this sheet of paper. At the first argument, they say that this is going to be seen as military aid, and that is why they still have the link snare. However, this is not seen as a hegemony move because we're not actually providing any military capabilities. Sure, if we were giving them rockets or guns or munitions, this would be pretty different, but giving them rats that dig up landmines is probably not going to trigger Russia going, oh my god, that military is so strong over there right now, because all we're doing is taking out the unexploded ordnance landmines that are there right now. The next argument that I want to look to is the argument where they say that people sign treaties all the time that they don't implement, but this is not an important argument at the point at which international countries are not able to internationally backlash against treaties that they have signed because they fear the loss of their international relevance. Is probably a reason why there is no link scenario to this, because Russia doesn't have the ability to backlash against a treaty that they're supposedly supporting. Is at least enough defense for us to outweigh on probability. But the next argument that I want to go for is that you can extend Corey's link turn that Russia does not want to exert hedge with the United States so close because it is they fear escalation. At the point at which they never respond to this scenario, then we probably check back best for aggression by providing a check against any Russian aggression. At the point at which they fear that the United States is going to be able to get involved easily because they're right off the border of Russia, means that we probably are able to best resolve all of the impact scenarios that they are talking about. And the affirmative team is winning the debate today because even if you grant any weight to this impact scenario as a result of magnitude, it is going in favor of the affirmative. But moreover, the last impact that I want is the no time frame argument that Corey goes for. They say that the shutoff is going to happen instantaneously, but that is probably not a reason why any individuals are going to die. Yeah, it's chilly there at night, but a few more blankets is going to be able to shore you up against this. At the point at which we're in springtime now, it's simply not that cold. I have been to that part of the world, and it really is not cold enough to cause everyone to die. Is probably the reason why this impact defense means that they are never going to be winning the debate today, because we are winning on probability.
You know, guys.
To stop people from getting blown up by the headlines. I think that you guys, Montana, kind of get surprised in this debate unnecessarily. I suspect, at least this is what I'm guessing, tell me if I'm wrong, right? What it seems like is you have like a strategy prepped, you heard rats, you thought, oh, what the hell, and kind of hit the panic button. At least that's my thinking. Is that a fair assessment or no? I may be off base.
More or less, it was just the issue of like mines. That was the only.
Gotcha. So I think that you were actually in a better position than you thought you were. I thought the pipeline you said was really solid, actually. I thought that all of your arguments on position were more intuitive than the negative arguments on the position. But unfortunately, I think that they are able to kind of take advantage of time trade-offs and the overall situation, and put a lot of answers on the JSAT that you guys you don't end up being capable of coping with in the blog. Here's how I evaluate the debate. I look at the Russia pipeline disad, and I think it's pretty solid, but I think that there are some compelling affirmative answers that that are not sufficiently addressed. The first is that they're just rats, there's no guns involved, which means Russia won't think it's a big deal. You know, they've got treaty commitments that say they don't want landmines, etc. So maybe they'll just wave this one off. I think that you guys could answer that argument more effectively. You've got some decent stuff out there, you're like, but it's still military aid. I think if you give me some examples of like empirical times when Russia has interpreted even small gestures on the part of the West as hostile, then you might be able to kind of beef up that link argument and show, even if they think it's just military aid, even if they think it's not really military aid, they can still have a problem with this. I also think you could be leveraging Advantage 2 to provide you link arguments to the DISAD, right? Their Advantage 2 is basically like, we want to get rid of landmines on what is probably right now the most sensitive part of the entire world, so that people currently in Crimea, whatever you prefer, can flee that area, which is under Russian domination, into like Ukraine. I think that if you kind of articulate a scenario like that, it becomes much easier to believe that Russia has a big problem with the Aff. Right? And for you guys, honestly, I think if you're going to read like a small affirmative, I think you might have been better off from a strategic perspective without Advantage 2. Just go small and kind of duck the punches, basically. Okay. And then be really stacked on, no, seriously, this is just like 4,000 rats, we're going to drop them off like by a parachute in the middle of Ukraine, and that's, whatever. I don't know exactly how they get it done, but you get it.
I think parachuting rats is a good way of thinking about it.
Yeah, all right, fair enough. So the second argument, I think that they've got this argument, they're characterizing as a link turn. I don't think it's a very good argument, but I don't think there's a clear answer, which is that if the U.S. is involved in the region, then Russia is going to be more cautious in the future, so they might not be inclined to shut down the pipeline. I think that you guys actually probably control uniqueness. I don't think they're going to shut down the pipeline this close, so I don't think this argument is offensive. But you know, it's a problem for you, right? Because it is a link takeout. The answer to it should obviously be like, well, Russia's probably not afraid of American rats. They're afraid of like nuclear missiles and tanks. So I'm not persuaded by this argument, but you know, it's their own fault. So I think that even if I were to give you a risk of DISAD, the impact is also very small, right? And it's fine by me if you want to read DISAD with small impacts, but here you've got a really easy, larger impact to go for, which is the economy, right? The European Union is in dire economic condition, you know, with the biggest countries still suffering from currency crises, etc. And you've just told me that 25% of the EU's energy, or at least natural gas, is coming straight from Russia. If it gets turned off all of a sudden, I imagine that would have a pretty profound effect on industry in the European Union, which gets you to a much bigger scenario than you know, Ukrainians, bless their souls, freezing to death in the increasingly warm days of spring, right? Yeah, and I don't understand this time frame argument. It's kind of weird. It's like, is Russia going to wait until next January to backlash?
Oh no, like the argument I was making there was that when they've done it historically, they do it in January, like sometime between January and March when they start the shut-off.
That makes some sense to me, right? But the problem is that also gives you a big time frame delay, where it's like you have to, your impact doesn't happen until like 9 months from now. And it seems like Russia would probably have gotten bored or be mad about this particular action by then, which is an argument you guys should probably be offering. Yeah, so bigger impact would give you a better opportunity to outweigh the leverage of the case. The other thing is, if you don't have a counter plan, you've got to answer the advantages. You can't let them end up with a 100% probability of saving some Ukrainian children from getting blown up, because then the PMR just gets the grandstand about how this is the only guaranteed impact. And you know, if you think there's even a mild probability that the DISAD won't come true, then you would have to save the children, right? So yeah, you've got to make those case answers. Other thing I wanted to say to you guys is, I thought in terms of, and that should explain my decision, right? I think there's very little risk of the DISAD. I think that there is a guaranteed possibility of saving Ukrainian children. And as far as the refugees turn goes, I think it's non-unique, because if they're going to be refugees, presumably their life in Crimea is not terrific at the moment. So I'm not sure how much worse the camps could be, even if they are internment camps. And second, you know, this would be parallel at best, right? So yeah, I agree with the PMR's analysis there. The other thing I want to mention is I think topicality on military aid could be a viable option for you. I think you just need to do clearer interpretation that was maybe a bit more balanced. When you're trying to beat somebody on T, your goal is to find the definition that is the most beneficial to the affirmative, but that the affirmative can't quite meet, right? That's what you're aiming for, because that's the hardest for the app to argue against. And I think that could have been an option for you in the MO. The way it played out, I actually thought you made the correct decision on what to go for. I didn't think T was a viable option, just the way everything was quite structured. But I think with a bit more concentration on that argument, it would have been a better shape. For you guys, just a few quick comments. I already mentioned I thought you might be better off trying to just duck the punches. If you're going to go small, go all the way and be like undetectable. I think you could have cleaned up your interp on military aid,
yes.
Right? Because it sounded to me like it was actually the same as theirs, except you were bragging about how it was from CRS report. I could have misinterpreted what you were saying. It's neither here nor there really, but just a thought. You want to be clear with those interpretations. And I also thought, I think you made the correct sort of detection of global strategy in the MG, which is they're much more likely to be on a procedural than they are on the rest of the debate. So it makes sense to load up some extra time on topicality. But you spent way more time on T increase than T military aid, which to me is the less dangerous argument. So yeah, I would flip that around a little bit. Yeah, MG is really solid, really, a little bit weak on second T. Remember, you have framework preempts to topicality as well that you're not extending, which I think, just be thorough, right?
Yeah.
Take every opportunity you have. Oh, and one other thing for your MO. If you're going to go for this gas pipeline disad, try to impact the disad into the case impacts. So find some reason why shutting off Ukrainian gas is going to be relevant when you're talking about like the refugee situation, right? Like not only are they going to be refugees in refugee camps, but now they're not even going to have goddamn gas, right? So they're living in a tent in the middle of mud, like 20 miles over the border in a former landmine field with no ability to keep themselves warm, except for some additional blankets as the PMR crafts these units. Yeah, so all right, that's all I've got. I've talked for a while. If you have any questions, please let me know.
Just real quick, on that kind of, the first advantage that I'm looking at, like, there is nothing negative to say about that in my mind. Like, how do you hit that kind of advantage?
Okay, so I would go a few different directions. I don't know anything about Ukrainian landmines, so I am not right there with you. But at an absolute minimum, you could do things like say, okay, the rats aren't going to get there for a while. I don't know how many of these rats we have or where they're currently stationed, but presumably there's got to be some sort of significant operation to get them there in the first place and to get them in place. So I think you can say there's going to be an extended time frame for this to happen, while the disad impact happens immediately because Russia finds out that it's going down soon. You could also make arguments that like Russia or maybe the Ukrainian government or maybe like Russian like paramilitaries hanging out in Ukraine are going to make life super difficult for the rats. Right? You could make the argument, you can make arguments that the rats are ineffective. I mean, presumably they know more about the rats than you, but, right, there's something there. And then also impact defense, right? They're saying, I suspect, I don't think you guys are misrepresenting anything, but you're definitely painting this landmines problem as a bigger deal than it actually is. I'm pretty sure the stat you're reading is about 2,000 deaths up to 2012, not in 2012.
Yeah, the original
right?
stat that I read is there were 22 total deaths in 2012, and total in Ukrainian history there are 1,987.
Okay, so
you definitely did not say
you
that.
said that right. So we're talking about like basically your odds of dying from stepping on a landmine in Ukraine are roughly the same as your odds of getting attacked by a shark, right? So
Ukraine,
like that's the way you want to frame that impact. And just be like, dude, this is not worth risking a nuclear confrontation with Russia over, right? Or not worth like destroying the European economy. I think that's the way to go. Because they're really tiny, you're right, that's hard to oppose. So, yeah, that's probably the best I can do. The other thing is, you always have counterplans available. And this is something you should work on being flexible with, is trying to have like the ability to just say, hey, how about an advantage counterplan? Let's just have somebody else do it. Why not have Russia come in and get rid of the bombs or get rid of the landmines? Because they will definitely not backlash if they do it. Does that make sense?
And they look better than Ukraine and everything
right.
great.
And of course, they're going to come along and be like, whoa, but Russia doesn't have our awesome rats. And you could be like, well, what a pity, we only saved 11 lives a year instead of 22.
Actually, our A strat was object fiat. Russia's planting the landmines right now, which is probably a hard link to the pipeline disad. But
Yeah,
that's why we don't really talk about that, but you know.
Fair enough. Other questions?
I don't think so.
All right. Good round, guys. Good luck in the rest of the
Thank you.
Thank you so much.